In the late 1940s, something happened in the United States that will later inspire one of the most famous horror stories in the history. A teenage boy whose identity remained hidden for decades became the center of a chilling series of exorcisms. People later referred to him as Ronan Doe or Robin Manheim, and according to later investigations, his real name was likely Ronald Hunkner. He was just 13 or 14 years old, but when people claim to have witnessed around him will shock the entire country. The story began after the death of someone very close to him, his aunt, Harriet. She was deeply interested in spiritualism and had introduced the boy to the Ouija board. Shortly after her death, strange things began to happen inside the family's home. At first, it was just unexplained sounds, like scratching noises coming from inside the walls or beneath the door. But soon, the situation escalated. Furniture appeared to move on its own, and objects would shift or even fly across the room when the boy was nearby. As time went on, the boy himself began to change. During the day, he seemed calm and almost normal, but at night, his behavior became deeply disturbing. He would suddenly start scratching, fall into a trance, like states, and speaking strange, guttural voices. Then comes the most terrifying detail. Marks began to appear on his body. Scratches and red lines formed on his skin, sometimes even shaping into words, and no one could explain how they get there. His family, terrified and desperate, sought help from anyone they could find. They consulted doctors, psychiatrists, and religious figures, but none of them could provide an answer. Eventually, they turned to a Lutheran pastor, who, after observing their boy, suggested something unexplained. They should seek help from a Catholic priest. The first exorcism attempt took place at Georgetown University Hospital. The boy was then restrained to a bed while the priest began the ritual, but the situation quickly spiraled out of control. According to reports, the boy managed to free one of his hands, tore a piece of metal from the bed, and used it to attack the priest, injuring his arm and forcing the ritual to stop. After this failed attempt, the strange phenomenon didn't stop. In fact, it became even more intense. More scratches, appeared on the boy's body, and one of them reportedly formed the word Louis. His mother believed that this was a sign, and the family decided to travel to St. Louis in search of further help. In St. Louis, they contacted the Catholic priest, who agreed to perform another series of exorcisms. This time, the process will last for weeks. According to priest accounts, the boy's bed will shake violently, objects would move or fly through the air, and he showed a strong aversion to anything considered sacred. He reacted aggressively to prayers, crosses, and holy water, and at times he spoke in a voice that didn't seem like his own. During one of the sessions, it was reported that words such as evil and hell appeared on his body, and in the chaos, the boy even broke a priest's nose. The exorcism continued night after night, with no clear sign of a process. You know, as the priest struggled to understand what they were dealing with, Finally, on April 18, 1949, something changed. During one of the final rituals, the priest called upon Saint Michael to drive out whatever was inside the boy. Moments later, the boy suddenly became calm. He looked at the priest and simply said, "He's gone." From that moment on, the strange events reportedly stopped completely. After everything, the boy went on to live what was described as a normal life. There were no more unexplained behaviors, no more scratches, and no more signs of anything unreal. However, not everyone believes this was a case of a demonic possession. Some investigators later argued that the boy may have been psychologically disturbed or even deliberately faking parts of the events. Others suggested that the witnesses may have exaggerated what they saw, influenced by their own beliefs and expectations. Skeptics have pointed out that many of the phenomena described could, potentially be explained without involving anything supernatural. So, what really happened in the house in 1949? Was this truly one of the most convincing cases of demonic possession in history, or simply a misunderstood case of human behavior shaped by fear, belief, or imagination? What makes this story even more fascinating is that it later inspired a novel published in 1971, which would go on to become one of the most iconic horror films ever made, The Exorcist. After hearing this story, so what do you think? If you find our story interesting, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe.